Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be painting two portraits. The paint I decided to use this time around is the Turner Design Gouache. This gouache is, I would say, price-wise, it's probably on the lower middle end, but quality-wise, I would say it's more on the higher end. I like that the finish, once it's dry, is kind of like this perfect matte, and it kind of has like this velvety texture to it, actually kind of similar to these Princeton Velvetouch brushes I'm using. But once it dries, it's just completely matte and you can't even see your brush strokes. So I really enjoy using these paints. And again, they're definitely at a pretty good price point in comparison to other brands such as Schmincke and Winsor & Newton, although I do love those gouaches as well. So the Design Gouache is not acrylic gouache, so you can re-wet it once it's dry. So that's something to keep in mind if you're ever using these. So you can see in the video as it's drying, it gets this like perfect like matte finish. And then again, I mentioned that for these paintings, I'm using the Princeton Velvetouch brush line. This is the line of brushes I pretty much use for all of my gouache work. I like to have separate brushes for whatever medium I'm using. And for gouache, I really like this line. So in this painting, I think I'm using like a 6 round, and then I'm using a 10/0 liner brush for the detailed line work. One of my goals this year was to become better and mainly more confident in myself in drawing portraits. And my portraits are very cartoony, and I think that's kind of because of how I structure them when I start out. I typically start these in Procreate because I still do a lot of erasing, undoing. I use the liquify tool a lot to kind of just make little adjustments when something isn't looking quite right. Because as of right now, I don't really have the confidence in myself in drawing this on the piece of paper with a pencil and having it like perfectly centered and not ruining the paper with a bunch of eraser marks. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, which I think if I stopped using Procreate, I would probably learn a lot faster. So that's something I should definitely work on. But for now, I'm drawing these in Procreate. I print them out on my printer, and then I transfer them onto the watercolor paper. And then I can make sure that it's perfectly centered and in exactly the position that I want it to be in. For these illustrations too, I wanted to keep them with one color so that I could just think about the overall shape and not the complexity of like highlights and shadows and skin color and hair color and all the details that come with the hair. My approach for this plan is to keep doing them in this style, and then as I feel comfortable and more confident in myself, to kind of expand into more detailed illustrations, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite there yet. I definitely struggle with drawing portraits, and for me, just thinking of it as lines and shapes and no color, it just makes it easier for me to paint it that way. So I'm taking baby steps with this. So I started out with the profile view because that's easier for me to draw. So next time I'm probably going to try like the straight on view or like the 3/4 view. And I'll just slowly evolve. That's at least my plan. And then once I'm comfortable with one color, then I'll start adding in like actual color and do highlights and shadows and focus on that. I take each painting session as kind of a way to learn something new. Like I only have really one focus that I'm trying to achieve with each painting. Otherwise, it becomes really overwhelming for me because you're trying to focus on everything instead of one specific issue that you want to work on, whether it's shape or highlights or color or composition. So that's the approach I've been taking this year. I really like how these turned out, even though they're super simple. They're not complex. They're not even that realistic. They're more cartoony, I think, than anything. But as a set, like as them facing each other, I think they look really nice together. There was one mistake I did when I was painting these is that I painted, there's two sides to this watercolor paper. One side is more rough and the other is kind of smooth. I didn't paint on the same side of the paper for each of these paintings, so it's kind of a little weird, but you can see on this one, this is painted on the rough side, so you can see the roughness come through in the paint strokes more towards the bottom part of her chest. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know what approaches you do to improve your art and what little tricks you do while you're painting. For me, again, it's just kind of focusing on one thing and slowly building up to something else. I really like that I paid attention to the details throughout her hair, like getting the little strands in around the edges of her hair. I think that adds more detail and it makes the hair seem a little bit more realistic, even though it's kind of just this one block of color. And it gives some variance into the shape, and it kind of seems like it wasn't as planned as it is. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!